incoming students, this is truly an honor and a privilege for us. If you don't know Admiral Clark, Dean Hernandez is going to introduce him, and you obviously get to know him the next hour, but just from my own personal experience and a few interactions I've had with him, we truly have an incredible leader among us, and that's how I describe Admiral Clark as a leader, a man of God, and I look forward to our time together. Dean Hernandez.
Yes, it's my privilege to introduce to you Admiral Vern Clark. Admiral Clark completed a distinguished 37-year Navy career in 2005. His Navy experience spans his early days in destroyers, command of a patrol gunboat as a lieutenant, and conclusion in the halls of the Pentagon as the Chief of Naval Operations and a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In between, he commanded 3 ships, 2 destroyer squadrons, the Atlantic Fleet's Anti-Submarine Warfare Training Center, a carrier battle group, the 2nd Fleet, NATO's striking fleet, and the U.S. Atlantic Fleet. Admiral Clark was the 2nd longest serving CNO in history. His #1 priority was to win the battle for people while leading the Navy forward into the 21st century. The result was the best recruiting and retention in history. He forged an effort to make the Navy more competitive and to posture the Navy for the challenges of the post-9/11 world. His innovations led to billions of dollars in savings and the highest operational readiness the Navy had witnessed in decades. Admiral Clark has received numerous military decorations, including multiple awards of the Distinguished Defense Service Medal, Navy Distinguished Service Medals, the Legion of Merit, Distinguished Service Medals from Army, Air Force, and the Coast Guard, and international awards from 8 other nations. In retirement, he's been honored with the Eisenhower Award from the Business Executives for National Security, the Distinguished Sea Service Award from the Naval Order of the United States, and the Distinguished Service Medal of the Military Order of the World Wars. Admiral Clark earned his undergraduate degree from Evangel College, an MBA from the University of Arkansas, and an honorary doctorate degree from the University of Toledo and also from ODU, Northwest University, and Palm Beach Atlantic University. Since retirement, Admiral Clark has served on various boards in industry and education. He's also engaged in consulting in the national security arena and frequently lectures regarding our military and the principles of leadership, which we'll talk about today. But our favorite role that Admiral Clark is filling now is as a distinguished professor at Regent University. Would you please welcome Admiral Clark?
So, Ernie, why don't you share with folks what we are going to do for, we have 45 minutes left.
Yes, sir. We have 45 minutes, and thank you, Admiral Clark. I proposed a few questions, just knowing you guys perhaps better than he might, and who you are, and your ambitions, and what sort of drives you. So I proposed a few questions and just topics for Admiral Clark to discuss, and I'm sure there'll be some interaction, as is normal, I think, in his discussions and lectures. Loves to ask questions and get you guys to think. So please participate, as is all I'll say, and share your thoughts. That really adds to the discussion and meeting. And so I think with that, Admiral Clark, wherever you want to start is fine.
Okay, great. Well, I want to start by saying that I appreciate the description of my life and my biography. There's a couple of points in there that are not in there that are really important. I'm married to this beautiful blonde from Texas. Now, I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm not a Texan. I speak slowly and have a little bit of a drawl. I don't know how I got that, but she's special, and she gave us 2 sons, and I have 5 grandchildren. Now, part of this is about the exciting element of life. My oldest grandchild, my granddaughter, just got her driver's permit. And we are all living on pensions. And they were out 2 days ago, and she was out tearing around the neighborhood in my golf cart, which is a safer way for her to learn how to drive. So It's a treat to be with you all. And Ernie has given me several questions here. And I know what you all are working on. What's your name?
Carter Budwell.
Carter? This is really something weird going on here, Carter. You're the only guy in this group.
Where's Michael?
You're in the group, you're
Yes.
not just,
Very observant.
so, well, I'm always looking for inequities. And clearly the guys are at the disadvantage here in this group. Of course, they would have been if there were 13 of them and only two women too, so. Self-deprecation. Well, anyway, so the question posed to me was talk about managing expectations. So the first thing that we did here was to start trying to manage expectations. What did I do to manage expectations? Ask Carter to suggest what our expectation was. And so we're going to talk about organizational life and leadership, right? All of you are involved in this thing called the Center for Global Justice. Let me ask a question briefly. Why did you decide to spend your time doing this? Anybody? I could go around the room and do the voluntary method and select you, but why did you decide to engage in the Center for Global Justice?
Fight for human rights and
Okay,
justice.
okay, good. What? Who else?
Because it's something meaningful that we get to do, like while we're still in law school.
Okay, what else? Yeah.
Practical experience.
For what?
For
What?
the law.
Let me just drill down.
Sure.
What experience are you pursuing?
I personally am not sure what I'm trying to
Okay, good.
shoot for, but we write briefs and memos and research. That's all useful for me.
Okay, so we don't always know, but we know that there are opportunities out there. Who else? Again?
Just gaining practical experience in international law.
Okay, good. Who else? Yeah.
You get to know about different issues and organizations around the world and who needs help, where they need help, and how they need help.
Okay.
Honestly, for me, it was a lot of following what I believe God was calling me to.
That this was a door that would open to you that helped you see it more clearly?
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to speak for you. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, it's just an area of life where I feel like the Lord has called me to work in international justice issues, and felt like this was a good opportunity to serve in that and stuff.
Okay, good. Who else? Anybody?
For networking.
Networking. Okay, good. Well, look, all those are, you know, they're personal. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's personal. You know, why am I doing this? But it's an important thing to do is to ask the question, why? So there are 24 hours in a day. Does anybody feel like they don't have enough to do? That's a rhetorical question. In law school, that's crazy, you would suggest. Well, so I oftentimes hit this point, but I encourage the last group that was in here. I love spending time with students. You can understand, I hope, that I spent my life investing in people. And when it was time for me to retire from the Navy, I wanted to continue to do that. And so one of the first calls I got when I retired, and it was 10 years ago last month when I officially retired, was the call from Regent University, and I knew that I wanted to do this. I love engaging with people who are on the grow. I just think this is one of the neatest things that a person could ever do. And I will tell you that when he reads my biography, I have a life as a commander. I spent over 50% of my career in command, which is pretty unusual in the Navy, considering that most often, if you have a 20-year career, you get to go to command at the 16 to 18-year point. You can't spend half of it in command, but the Navy made a really bad mistake with me, and they sent me to command as a lieutenant. and I had 5 years in the Navy. So I was privileged to start early. So it goes without saying that I learned a lot about leadership on my journey. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have ended up, running a place. But every stage of my journey had important things for me to learn. And I promise you, in my reflective years now, looking back, I now see how much growing I had to do every time a new opportunity and responsibility came my way. This is the natural order of things. And so you are, by deciding that you're going to engage in this activity with this group of people, you have added another notch on your growth and development ladder, whether you intended for it to be that way or not. And some of you clearly did, because you did it for the experience, to see what was going to be disclosed to you. But you had a natural inclination for a field of endeavor where there's some incredible injustices going on in the world, right? Well, obviously, you're wired up right in that, from that point of view also. And that certainly is an important part of that. The question was asked, how do you manage expectations and problem solving? How do you tackle massive and seemingly unsolvable problems? Any of you have a thought about how you go about doing that? How do we take on just incredibly big problems? Yes, sir.
Work with other people.
Okay. And let's drill down. Did others of you have a thought you want to build on that? Working with other people, and I could just then play the lawyer and say, for what? With what expectation? Yeah.
So first you have your objection.
No, I don't think I want to let you answer. Somebody else.
I guess I would say strategize. You always have to come up with some sort of strategy before you tackle one mission.
Okay, so now, please respond.
You strategize, and then you identify your objectives, which are the overarching things you're aiming to achieve, and then you break down the objectives into a series of goals, which are kind of steps along the way to get to each objective, and then you assign these objectives and specifically the goals to various people who are trusted, and then you work with them to achieve those goals in order to achieve the objectives, which is your ultimate mission.
Does anybody disagree with that? Well, Dean, it looks to me like we can go ahead and grant him his master's degree in organizational leadership. Now, how do we get started? Yeah.
I think as far as working with other people, you have to make sure that on a team the right people are in the right place. Like the people with the right skills are doing the work that fits them.
Okay, so let me ask a rhetorical question, but it'll help us think about this. So, how are we going to know when we achieved our objective? When will this problem be solved, do you think? Dream up a problem that you all think about every day. When will it be solved?
Such as like police corruption.
I'm sorry.
Such as, for example, like police corruption.
Yeah.
I feel like it may never be resolved.
There you go. There you go. So, that leads us to this whole thought about almost intractable and unsolvable problems, and that this kind of challenge is never going to go away. So then it raises the question, well, do I really want to work at this, or do I want to just throw my hands up and quit? And the answer is, you've made a decision on this. You have decided, even by being part of this group, that you're going to work on this. Well, if there's one thing I came to believe over time, is that there is no problem really that is unsolvable. It's always possible to solve a problem. even though the probabilities are low, it's not impossible. But if I was talking about corruption, I'm immediately, and if I'm a person of faith, I know that there's a fall inside of man, right? And it's not possible to change that, is it? No, that's foundational, isn't it? And so we're going to have, certainly we're going to have challenges with the human response. Now, one of the real miracles in my own personal life is that I came finally to appreciate the human response. But I want to tell you, in my early years, there were a lot of times I did appreciate the human response. I really didn't want to be bothered with the negative human response. When we say human response, I confess that usually I'm talking about the weaker side of the human response. But there is very much the positive side of the human response also, which is what I'm looking for every day in my organization, right? But there are, at the end of life, we don't measure whether our life was successful based upon how many intractable problems we solved. I've come to believe that the role of the leader is to make the organization and then the world a better place to be. So at Regent University, one of the things that I so loved about the whole idea of being here, and I so appreciate him sharing with you, I went to a little small Christian college called Evangel College. It's not so little anymore, but when I was there were only 600 of us there. And I didn't know, one of you said you wanted the experience. I didn't know at the time the way, what it was going to be like when I walked out the door. But I confess to you now, I'm very open with people. When I walked out the door, I wondered if this Christian education I had really equipped me to go take on the world. I wondered. And you can imagine now looking back how shocking it still seems to me. With that sense of insecurity that I felt walking out the door, that I got to end up running the whole Navy. I mean, I feel really, really good about the education that I got there. But you know what was so wonderful about it? It wasn't the global standing of all of the graduate degrees that the faculty had, and it wasn't all of that. It was that there were a group of people there who decided to pour their life into mine and help me grow. And that's what this educational experience is really all about. And by deciding that you're going to jump on the bandwagon and be part of a group that is going to invest of itself to try to make the world a better place to be is a wonderful tribute to you as people and what you believe about what it is you're supposed to do while you're here on this earth. I congratulate you for that. I think it's fabulous. Now, intractable problems. So, my father was a minister. Really smart guy. Lived to be 98. Mom will be 97 next month. She was 7 years younger than Dad. He robbed the cradle, but she was older. And my father taught me years ago to give thanks for the problems that are out there. And so he used to say all the time, thank God for problems. It's an interesting corollary here. The Bible says that God meets us at our what? I can't hear you.
Lowest.
At our lowest. At our point of need. We're really low, aren't we? You ever thought about that? Isn't that strange? Nowhere in the Bible does it say he meets us at our highest mountaintop. What do you think about that?
It allows us to see his true power and what he's capable of doing when we're at our lowest.
Okay.
Kind of reveals himself to them.
Very good. Who else? What do you think about that? He doesn't meet us when we're skipping over the top of the waves.
It really just clarifies that it's not in our strength, it's completely by his strength and his power and his spirit that we're able to do anything. And that
Okay.
anything that's in our best interest or our best efforts really are useless.
Other thoughts?
I think that he's there when, obviously he's still there when we're at our highest, but when we're at our lowest, we're more susceptible. We go to him more and we're more open to what,
You know,
him more. We feel like we need
I love
more.
that. Because I'm a real believer that people don't know how to pray at all. I mean, how many times have you heard a person get up to pray and say, Lord, be with us today? How many of you have heard that? Duh. Are you kidding me? You ever think of it like that? Of course he's there. The real prayer is, Lord, help us to sense your presence with us here today. But we do just say dumb things. So we say, Lord, be with us today. It's so stupid. But he is there. But what does it say about us when we're on the mountaintop that we tend to not notice? What does it say about us? Self-sufficiency. Isn't it amazing? You had a comment? Well, so, you know, this business about problems. Now, I just want to camp out here a little bit because I think it's really noteworthy that you all have decided to take on some of these virtual intractable problems. When it's related to the human response, we have to understand that there are some things that aren't going to be driven out of civilization. You know, man's ability to fail is going to be with us for as long as we're alive, right? By the way, anybody happy with the political situation we have today? I would think it's phenomenal that we could have a political situation in the United States of America where the Congress has an approval rating with single digits attached to it, and that we're not all marching on Washington. Isn't it amazing? I mean, over the course of my life, I remember when the approval rating went from the 40s to the 30s to the 20s and then the teens, and what are we at now today? I haven't looked lately, but somebody told me it was in single digits. I don't know, there's maybe one party or the other, I don't know. You know, there are, as human beings, we're always going to have a challenge with the inability of human beings to do the right thing every day. But Dad would say, Vern, thank God for problems. Thank God for problems. Now, why I believe it's important to us as individuals, as people, is that problems help us focus our energies. And it helps us decide also what it is we're going to, you know, when life is done, what is it people are going to say we were about? What did we do? So at the beginning, I just think it's fabulous that you've decided that you're going to work on some of these really, really hard problems. And I love to camp out on this just enough to say this about leading. Somebody's always leading, remember that. When I give presentations, I almost always use the slide, that's the number one slide, says leadership, the key in every human enterprise. Every single enterprise with people, there's leadership involved. So one of the cool things, even though I went to this little tiny Christian school called Evangel College, when I'm running the Navy, every May I went to Annapolis. Stood there in front of 900 to 1,100 brand new midshipmen, and they raised their right hand and took an oath to the nation. And I got to administer that oath. And my message always to them was this: first you will lead yourself. So the key in every human enterprise is leadership. Now, when people have trouble leading themselves, are they going to be successful leading others? Probably, I think that's the right word, probably not. I mean, I can't say categorically, because there's some people that have been pretty successful leading organizations and people that were just absolutely corrupt as could be. But they figured out how to isolate that personal challenge and still focus on effectively moving people forward. But leaders make things happen. So the first thing we do is that we make things happen in us. And the really people that accomplish great things over at the end of life are people just like you who decided that they were going to commit themselves to something. If you look at every major movement, or even minor movement, of people, of groups that accomplish great things, they accomplish them because people committed their lives to moving the needle with that particular cause. I don't know any way to describe this except to say that that's the way God made it. That's the way He made us. So we get to choose what we're going to do with our lives. So I encourage you to take on the tough, challenging ones, and then I'll just say this simply: it's a full course in this to discuss how do you make this happen. You got to create the right expectations. What can we achieve? Here's what I learned. One of my major jobs running the Navy was to constantly reinforce expectations. If expectations run away with themselves, come be with us and everybody's going to have a mansion on a mountaintop. You can't deliver that. You have to be careful, very careful, to effectively communicate what the expectation is. And we have to do that with ourselves. Remember, first we lead ourselves. What is the art of the possible here? What can we get done? First with ourselves. And if you look at the people that have accomplished great things in their life, what do we know about people that have been very, very effective? What kind of characteristics do they have that make them that way? Not rhetorical. What's the brainstorm it here? What kind of characteristics do they have?
I would say perseverance.
Perseverance, okay. What else? Characteristics.
Integrity.
Integrity, what else?
Courage.
Courage, what else? What the Bible speaks to us. Be of good courage. Why do you suppose that's in there? There are going to be days that it's going to be tough to press against this, the morass of difficulties coming our way. What else? Yeah.
Focused and driven. Focused.
Focus. What else?
Humility.
Humility.
Diligence.
Diligence. I love these words. They're so action-packed. What else?
Motivated.
Creative.
One more. We got to look for passion. Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I've been accused of that a time or two. But part of my calling was to communicate that I really believed in what this was about. There's one other really important one we don't have here. Committed. That's right near the top. One more. What is it? Starts with a D.
Diligence.
Disciplined.
Discipline. There aren't any truly great ones that weren't disciplined. Now, you know what? Why do we have New Year's resolutions? Because we lack discipline. Oh, you love it. It's the human response, right? I mean, we're human. We don't have all of these. We don't. And we don't even have discipline every day, hour of every day. One of my closest friends, I won't name names, but we were getting ready to retire, and he says, I can't go work for myself. And I said, why? He said, I'm not disciplined enough. I'll goof my time away. I need the structure of the organization to pull me along. That's quite an admittance. Think of that. By the way, this is not some hacker. This is a real high-level person. Discipline. Well, when Dad said, thank God for problems, the issue is to create this expectation that problems are going to be out there and not be buried by them. I'm amazed at how many people are buried by their problems. By the way, I'm going to talk to some folks this week about the whole idea of stress and the challenge of change. We live in the fastest changing times in the history of man. Anybody have a problem with that? If you do, throw away your computer, get rid of your iPad and all that stuff, because that's part of the change. If you don't like change, you know, you're not allowed to use that stuff. So if you want to play in the big leagues, you know, with the world of what's happening now, then we have to embrace change. Now, this is counterculture. Nobody is out there saying, you got to embrace change. I'm saying to you, not only do we embrace change, but we embrace the challenge of problems. Life is full of them. And when we understand that every time a problem crops up, it gives us this incredible opportunity to go make the world a better place to be. So, you know, my discipline was every morning when I'm shaving, my prayer to the Lord and to myself. Lord, help me today to make the Navy a better place to be. Because my mom and dad taught me to believe in the calling of every believer. I knew that a kid from Evangel College couldn't get to be the head of the whole Navy. I'm only the second one in history that didn't go to the Naval Academy. I knew that there was something really divine about the way this had all happened. I wasn't pursuing the job because I knew I couldn't get the job. And then, you know, they said, you're going to be the head of the Navy. And I said, holy cow, you asked for it. Because there were things about it I didn't like. And people will say, well, how could you have done that well and got to be a 4-star admiral and there were things about it you didn't like? Because I had grown with a human understanding that the human response made it where an organization with nearly 1 million people attached to it were going to have things going on in it that weren't going to be great every day. That one of the reasons that I was there was to make the place a better place to be. And that's what you're taking on. Intractable? Of course. Am I going to ever solve all the problems that exist? How could I? I got a Congress I got to deal with as my banker. You know, that's a little difficult to do, right? Okay. Facilitating leadership and those leading you, really a big challenge. When you think about that, how do we get the people that are leading us to lead well? Any thoughts jump to mind? I mean, we don't usually think about it in those terms. We usually think about low-life scumbag boss of mine. How many of you had a bad boss? I always ask this question. How many of you have had a bad boss? Oh, wow. That's the lowest response I've ever seen. I almost always get 80%. Well, you're going to have some. Because there are a lot of them out there. Because they're human. You know, they do dumb things sometimes. So how do we get the boss to lead us well? Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Now look, the newest, best book that I've read is this book called Building the Connection Culture. Do you know that the research shows that 70 to 80% of all the people working in organizations are disconnected from the mission of the organization? Can you believe it? 70 to 80% are in there just drawing a paycheck and can't wait to go home and thinking all day long about what they're going to do on Saturday or Friday night or whatever. That's shocking, but it's true. And you know what? You're right. I found out they're human too. And as soon as this book came out, I immediately bought copies, got on the line and went to Amazon and ordered them copies. Because I want both of them to understand that as an employee, I have a responsibility to connect with my boss. It's not just the boss's responsibility to connect to me. I have a responsibility to connect with them. And then there's all kinds of things you could do. And this is, probably an hour lecture, so we don't have an hour. But let me just say that if we know about good leadership techniques, then we facilitate those techniques by volunteering. For example, so you know I worked for a couple tough bosses. I mean, I worked for Don Rumsfeld. Is that tough enough? I mean, we're getting to the point that people are too young to really know who some of these guys are that I work for. But Rummy was a tough one. But it was important for me to know and understand him. And I understood that he didn't trust me because I was selected in the last 6 months of the Clinton administration to be the head of the Navy. And in fact, he thought all of the heads of the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and the Marine Corps were all Clinton guys. Shoot, I didn't have a relationship with Bill Clinton. Nothing like I had with President Bush. But that's because Clinton was, you know, all but out the door. So I understood that he thought we were, you know, he didn't trust us. We just wrap it up briefly. He didn't trust us. So I got to figure out how to help him lead better. But in order to do so, I've got to get past some barriers that he has. And so I set out on this journey to prove to him that he can trust me, which includes admitting when I didn't do as well as I could have done. And it was amazing whenever I would say, you know, boss, we dug into this challenge, you know, name it. And when we started peeling away the layers, we found out we weren't doing this nearly as well as we could have been doing. It was like peeling the layers off of the onion, you know. I mean, his face lit up. He started, he started smiling. I mean, he felt so gratified. He'd been successful at leading me to new and different and better ways of doing things. Didn't have anything to do with him. It had to do with me figuring out what do I need to do to get through to this guy. I had to admit that I wasn't perfect and that had the moral courage to challenge the assumptions. You get it? Am I communicating? There are ways to do this. But we never can do this if we don't understand the human response and how the human being is wired up. So lifelong calling. Figure out people. Lifelong calling. How to lead in different cultures. I would just promise you in the Navy, when somebody's going to overseas or to another job, we poured out our investment into them so that they could figure out how to align and adapt in the culture. If we don't take that on, you're going to work internationally. Remember this, if you're not growing, you're dead, right? That's what I told all my admirals, tell everybody. If we're not growing, we're dead. If we're going to go take on that kind of challenge, we have to invest. Remember the good book says we're going to reap what we sow. You know, if we don't sow all the labors that are required for us to master the knowledge that's required in law school, the idea that we're going to sit down and God's going to rip off the top of our head, pour all this knowledge in our head, 10 minutes before the exam, not going to happen. Why won't it happen? Why? Because it's not biblical. He designed this a different way. He designed it so we're going to reap what we sow. And so if we sow sparingly, we're going to reap what? There you go. And thank God, the reverse is also true. Comments? How do you lead people who are different from you? Oh, brother. Is there anybody else like you?
I hope not.
Well, not exactly like you. So, we're all wired up differently. And so this is a really big deal. This is why, to be an effective leader, you have to know a lot of stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, I've read hundreds of leadership books. And, I'm still learning. And that was a big shock for the Admiralty Corps and the Navy when I got to run the place, was because the first meeting, once a year, my predecessor, two removed, had started this thing where we bring all the admirals in the Navy into Washington, and we have a three-day deal called the All-Admiral, it's called Flag Officers. Flag officers are admirals. All-Flag Symposium. And the first day, the speech was, none of us know enough. We were really terrific. All of us are primarily, we're in the major tribes, major tribes of aviators and the submariners and the ship drivers. And we're really good at this, or we wouldn't be in this room. We're really good. But none of us know enough about how to be the executives running a $120 billion company. We don't know how to do that, which is why we fumble the ball for years and years. And so there are 4 books in the stack waiting for you on the table outside. And I encourage you to pick up those 4 books, and we're going on a journey. We're going someplace nobody's ever been before. And we're going to figure out how to do this better. That's what we're going to do. You know, what's my job? Define who we are as a people, what we believe in as a people, and where we're going as a people. Now, I didn't read those, I didn't say, okay, here's who we are. I just said, we don't know enough. We're going to do this better. To do this better, we all have to learn a whole bunch of stuff that we don't know now. Thrill of a lifetime. I had a problem. Dad said, thank God for problems. I got a bunch of dummy admirals. And I'm one of them. I have to know more. And off we went. Yeah, saved billions. Billions. One move, integrating the Marine Corps Air and Navy Air, was over $30 billion. One move, but it required to challenge a dozen assumptions about the way we do life, and to decide that it was really just we were clinging to old ideas and old habits and old patterns, and didn't have the courage to confront them and do something different. There are so many opportunities out there, and you guys have decided to take them on. Questions or comments? So much to talk about. Wish we had all week. Yeah.
What are a couple of your most recommended leadership books?
Number 1 is The Truth About Leadership by Posner, Barry Posner, and Kouzes, K-O-U-Z-E-S. And I've shared this widely the last 3 years here. It's the best one I've ever read. The newest one is just out about 2 months ago, and it's called Establishing the Connection Culture. And it's about this. This is unbelievable. There is now, we live in a world where now we have real evidence of what happens on the inside of a human being when they're connected versus when they're not connected. And I'm telling everybody, if you're not working connection, you're not doing your job. And I don't care who you are, your job is to work connection every day. Truth number 2 in The Truth About Leadership is credibility is the foundation of leadership. So listen, this is why though, I wanted to be at a Christian school. See, as I got more senior, the lawyers wouldn't let me go do churchy things, right? Because church and state. And if I did it with one church, I had to do it with every church. And I could never do it with every church, so I couldn't do it with, if it had a denomination attached to it, I couldn't do it. But here's what I really believe. I feel sorry for people who aren't people of faith, that do not have this faith inside of them that helps align this part of number 2 thing that leaders do, define what it is we believe in. So think about this. I had a crisis in retention, although nobody viewed it as a crisis because it had always been totally fouled up. We never ever made our goals. I took over the Navy, first term retention was 19%, and the goal was 38, and we had virtually never made our goals. That became my number 1 challenge. But if I really believed in the value of human beings, I wouldn't treat them the way we treated them. So we said that people were our number 1 asset, but all of our actions lied about it every day because we didn't act like they were important to us at all. In fact, we acted like they were disposable trash. You know, the old sea dogs, they're not as good as we were when we came in. Get them out of here. Give me another one. Well, you know, I just changed that like the first day. Now, I couldn't change it overnight, but it was amazing what one little move made, and I called it covenant leadership, and said, they promised to support and defend the Constitution. The covenant is, they promised that. If you're a leader in the Navy, what do you promise in return? And they went, what do you mean? I'm the boss. No, we're not talking about being the boss. What do you promise? And you know, what's amazing to me is I never expected, I knew I was sowing seeds. You can't, it takes 20 years to change the culture. You can't fix this overnight. Oh yes, you can. But I didn't know it. First year, we broke all the records in retention. The very first year. Just by somebody having the moral courage to stand up and speak with voice. Who are we? We believe in the value of this, the sons and daughters of America, and we're not going to treat them like that. And oh, by the way, if you're a leader, I'm going to keep score on how you're doing. You know, what you're investing in this person's life to make them successful. 39% of them were going home failing at this endeavor to serve the nation. And the question was, when do I get to go back in their neighborhood and try to get somebody else to come and be part of us if we send them home with a failure experience? We're not doing that without a cost. We're going to find out why you were not successful at leading this person to success. It changed overnight. It was shocking. We get to define this. It's, you know, we have a platform. And by the way, the first platform we have, remember, is with who? Us. Who am I going to be? Yeah.
Obviously leadership can be very draining and tiring and exhausting. What are certain ways that you find that are helpful to like renew yourself and rejuvenate so that you're able to still be at your best?
You know, I just don't understand the word tired very well. And so I'm going to speak to a group today, but we got 3 minutes.
Good.
Look, all the research shows it's 10% what actually happens to us, and it's 90% how we decide we're going to deal with what happened to us. So it's mostly here and here. And I could get by on 4 hours sleep. I woke up every morning 3 to 4 o'clock, 3:30, about 3:30. I didn't lay around in bed. There's too much to do. When I couldn't go to sleep, which was almost never a really pretty good sleeper, I just didn't sleep all that long. I never woke up thinking about the job. I just woke up. And then God gave me 24 hours. And honest to goodness, the biggest problem I had in retirement was I still was waking up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you know, there wasn't any place to go. And now my wife said, I married you for better or worse, but not for breakfast and lunch every day. So, you know, I like hard work, and I believe it was I'm motivated and turned on by the challenge. That's the way I'm wired up, and God, and by the way, I believe that stress is good. It's another one of those things like change. I'm supposed to embrace change. I'm supposed to embrace stress. Stress didn't come from the devil. God made us this way and created this thing called stress to light our fire. I remember reading one time said, you know, the job of a leader is to light a fire in people. Not buying that. You got to get up every morning and light a fire in all your employees. You run out of matches. You know, to light a fire under them. Our calling is to light a fire in them. Well, you know, I was wired up that way. I have a fire in me, but you know where it comes from? It comes from my faith. I really believe with everything that's in me. Mom and Dad taught me to believe in the calling of every believer. He had a plan for my life. I never could have dreamed up the plan that would have me leading the Navy someday. This didn't come from, you know, this was not just something that fell out of the sky. I mean, I really believe that he opened all these doors. So it was easy for me to go at it. And actually, then, you know, 4 or 5 hours of really good sleep is way better than 10 hours of wrestling around and wearing out the sheets, tossing and turning. So but really embracing what, I flunked life balance. And, you know, I readily admit it, and I'm not, I mean, there are things I wish I could have done better. I'll tell you what, people ask me about, well, you know, how'd your kids come through this? I guarantee you, my kids got more letters from their dad than any of their friends. When I was deployed, real letters, telling them how much I loved them and how, telling them the things my dad told me. Remember, God has a plan for you. And whenever I'd get in trouble, Connie would say, and I got in trouble. You know, I had bad days. Connie would say, you better call your dad. Hi, Dad. How are you, son? Good. What's going on? I said, well, I got something I need to talk to you about. And I'd talk to him about it. And then he'd say, get this verbatim. Here we go. Well, Vern, you believe God put you there, don't you? Yeah, Dad, I do. Well, you know, Vern, He never put you there to fail. Yeah, Dad, I know. Let's pray. And then he made one of those prayers. It was a smart prayer, not a dumb prayer. You know, God be with us today. Of course, He's going to be with us. Can't not be with us. Vern, let Vern sense how close you are to Him. That's a different prayer. Let Him see how you're working Him through this. We'd hang out and he said, I'll be having some friends praying with you. Man, I'd be ready to leap off a mountain. Okay, here we go again. Reminded me who I was as a person, what I believed in, and where I was going. That make sense? Look, it's so fun talking to you guys. I wish you every success as you take on intractable challenges. Shoot, anybody can handle the easy stuff. Really. It takes giants to take on the tough stuff. So go slay some giants, okay? Lord, be with this wonderful group of students that are collected here today. Let them see how you're working in their lives. And let them catch a glimpse of what you have for them as they walk this journey. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
My favorite poem is from Longfellow's Psalm of Life. You know, those teachers that made you memorize something. And the last stanza goes, so let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any faith, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. The previous stanza, lives of great men and women all remind us we can make our lives sublime. And departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. See, go out and make some footprints. The world is dying for people that live a life that's worthy of the example that's being called for. So when you talk about intractable problems and injustices that exist, somebody is establishing footprints that are bad and evil, and somebody else has to put some footprints out there that are good and of the divine. That's our call. Make some footprints. God be with you.